Hi, everyone. I'm coming to you with a cold, and I probably shouldn't even be recording this, but I wanted to record before I went on my trip to Bonaire, which is a Caribbean island, and it's a scuba diving trip. Wanted to let you know what I'm taking with me, and I've been meaning to talk about now that we're in November and nearly halfway through November. Today is November 14th, that I wanted to look back on not the last 6 months because it's not the end of the year yet, but it's nearly the end of the year. So I was curious because I had done a video, I guess at the end of June, about my reading in the first 6 months of the year, and I love that, chunking it up like that. So this won't be for the entire last 6 months of the year, but I did look back and made some notes on that. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. All right. First, I don't want to forget to mention. I have my salt lamp on, which I absolutely adore, and I don't think I've ever had it turned on when I'm filming here in front of this window, and I just love the glow. It is a rainy day. I feel like at least I have a little bit of light coming in on me from the window. And thank goodness I have some tea. I forgot to mention the last time that I got a surprise in the mail, maybe a few weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago. And this was from Penguin Books, which is Viking. A Viking is the imprint, which I think is a Penguin, yeah, a division of Penguin Random House vintage books. And I don't know why I got this. I did read a so these are Helen Garner books that were written, I think maybe this was in the 1980s. I'll look. And Vintage is reprinting them in this style. And earlier this year, I read Monkey Grip by Helen Garner in this style, but it was an ebook. It was through NetGalley, and I really enjoyed it. It was an atmospheric 1970s. Helen Garner is an Australian writer, and it was a 1970s look at a young mother caught up in what was then the Melbourne counterculture scene, and she was just making some bad decisions, and you were just Helen Garner created a character that you were rooting for, but then you were also like, oh, come on, stop making these decisions. But I'm telling you, I loved the atmosphere of that book. I don't remember what video I talked about it. And I don't even have it written down. Sometimes I forget to write down on my books read list books that were NetGalley things. So, anyway, this is the story of a murder trial. So, it's not fiction. It says on the evening of Father's Day 2005, separated husband Robert Farquharson was driving his three young sons back to their mother when the car veered off the road and plunged into a dam. Farquharson, and I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing that wrong, survived the crash, but his boys drowned. Was this a tragic accident or an act of revenge? The court case that followed became a national obsession. Helen Garner tells the definitive and deeply absorbing story of it all, from crash to final verdict, through a panoply of perspectives, including her own as a member of the public. Garner captures the exacting procedure and brutal spectacle of Australia's criminal justice system. Really interesting. I started this. It has a foreword by Sarah Weinman. And at the time, I wasn't in a place that I could read about this tragic event, but I do like court drama, court procedurals, so to speak, whether it's a book or a movie or a documentary. So I will read this, but whoever sent this to me from Penguin House, I mean, it was from Penguin House Books. I just really appreciated it and I wanted to acknowledge that. Let me know if you've read this, by the way. I highly recommend Monkey Grip. Okay, what am I reading and what will I be taking on the trip? What I'm reading is what I'll be taking on the trip because we leave in just a couple days and I don't think I'll finish these. I might finish this one though. I finally got from the library Rhine Journey by Anne Schlee. It has a lovely foreword by Lauren Groff. This is an absolutely beautiful reprint in the way that McNally Books is doing. Sorry for the reflection. I mean, look at that. Oh my God, it's stunning. Nora from pear.jelly on Instagram talked about this. And I was so captivated. I had to wait a long time to get this. And finally, I have it. On a Victorian pleasure cruise, a chance encounter opens the floodgates to desire, regret, and possibility in this period gem of feeling and clarity. And the first thing that Lauren Groff says about this book is when she started reading it, she just assumed it was written in the time that it takes place, which is in the 1860s, 1851. She was shocked to find out that it was written in the late 70s, published in 1980. Sorry. And it was actually a finalist for the Booker Prize in 1980, I think. It says the first of her novels for adults, Rhine Journey, was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 1981. Really something. She was born in Connecticut and spent parts of her childhood and adolescence in Egypt, Sudan, and so on. She went to boarding school in England and read English at Somerville College, Oxford. She wrote children's books too. This is about Charlotte, the main character, who is the sister of Charles Morrison, a reverend. And they travel, Charles, the brother, his wife and daughter, who she adores, the niece, and his maiden sister Charlotte, a seemingly meek, middle aged woman who spent her life attending the needs of others. Like the river upon which they're traveling, Charlotte contains hidden depths. A chance encounter with a fellow passenger in Koblenz unleashes in her a sudden and violent awakening of memory, fear, and sexual desire. This is written in such a delightful, like 1850s, 1860s style. That's what's so captivating. And I think that's what captivated Nora too. I'm so happy to be reading this. I really am. It's just what I needed. It's so readable. The line by line writing is crazy. Speaking of the Booker Prize, I've been watching a lot of The Booker because not only does he put out weekly videos about his reading updates, which I highly recommend. I've gotten so many wonderful recommendations from Bob over the years. He always does a live video when the Booker Prize is being announced, and this is the third year that I've been able to catch that video because I think it's 4:30 Eastern time that the prize is announced, and it's so much fun. You can still see that video, and he's been reading his way through the short list of Booker prizes from year to year, and he just did. Oh, what year was it? His latest video, his Booker Prize video, 2015, 2016, or even later, because it's the year that the Booker awarded 2 winners. Remember that. It was maybe 2018 when they awarded Margaret Atwood and Bernadine Evaristo. Do I have that name right? For Girl, Woman, Other, and for The Testaments. That lineup of the shortlist is amazing. Dux Newburyport, he reminded me that I want to read that book someday. And I would like to reread Girl, Woman, Other because I read it in 2020 before I was capturing my thoughts here and sharing them. And I really don't remember a lot about it. So, yeah, check out Bob. So, the other thing that I said in my other video I was waiting for was The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I didn't know about anything about this book, and I love it that they sent me this tiny mass market paperback because I would have never taken this book with me if it was one of those black spine penguins because I think it would have been too large. But now I'm thinking I might be able to take this on the trip because it's so tiny and I don't want to leave it behind. I'm loving it. The thing that I absolutely love right off the bat about the Brothers Karamazov is the narrator. And you know what I'm talking about if you've read this book. I don't know that he ever I don't think he ever introduces himself. He just goes right in. He's somebody that is from the town where the Karamazov family was, and he still is. And he goes into the Karamazov brothers' parents, their really hard childhood. The fact that the kids had to be uh, taken away or had to live with some benefactors. And he's telling us the story of the brothers. And right now he's talking about Alexei, who he also calls Aloysia, who has decided he wants to be a monk. And Dmitri and Ivan. When I read the foreword of this edition, this is, by the way, Constant Garnett's translation, which I'm loving. When I read Dostoevsky's story, his life story, the fact that he was jailed at least once, maybe more than once, and then sent to Siberia for 4 years, the last time he was arrested, for, I don't know, poverty debts, I think it was. When he went to Siberia, he actually survived, which most people didn't. And then when he had served his term, for whatever reason, he wasn't allowed to come home. He was still exiled to Siberia and finally did come home, met another wife because maybe his other wife had died. And she was pivotal in his writing life. And that's when he began churning out novels so much later in life. And I think this was his last novel. I love that story. It, as the writer of the foreword says, it just informed all of his writing. You can tell he got just a real education into personalities that he would have never met had he not been in Siberia. I'm loving the first person narrative, the really closeness of the narrator's voice and his knowledge of these brothers. I think 2 of them are brothers and 1 is a half brother. I know that they get together later on to do something. I have very loosely read about this book. I really don't want to know what it's about and what it's headed to, but it's unputdownable for me. It's so readable. It's so readable, just like the translation of War and Peace that I read, which was by Anthony Burgess, maybe. I'll correct myself right here if I'm wrong. But yeah, loving it. So glad that I started it. What I want to say quickly about the last, I don't know, 5.5 months or so, 4.5 months of reading is that I feel like I just hit upon more books that I loved in the first half of the year. And then the second half continues to be a pattern of really loving some classics, mostly modern classics, and some classics, and debut novels. This is really the pattern in the first 6 months also. So I loved James Baldwin, Giovanni's Room, that I read, and I loved the debut novel Practice, or The Practice, by Rosalind Brown. Loved them both. I really loved some essay collections and or memoirs that I read. I shouldn't say and or. And Any Person is the Only Self by Alyssa Gabbard. I think I read that in July. Sloane Crossley's memoir, Grief is for People. If I have that wrong, I'll put it here. And the memoir Committed by Suzanne Scanlon. I loved it. Those all came out this year. So, yeah, really interesting. I did not get to the classic authors that I thought I would in the 10 classics I'd like to read this year video. I mostly talked about the authors, but I did not read a Thomas Hardy. I did read a Henry James, which is fantastic. I never started the Wilkie Collins. Doesn't mean I won't, but I haven't started it. Yeah, I can't wait to look back on that video to see what I said at the end of the year. 2 other books that I just wanted to share that I got from the library that I won't be taking with me, but that sound super interesting, is this one. These are both reprints. This is called Mrs. Bridge from Evan Connolly. And this says, let me find out when it was written. So Evan Connell was born in Kansas City in 1924, the son of a doctor. He went to the Navy, trained as a pilot. He went to a university, got an English degree, lived in Paris for a while. And Mrs. Bridge was published in 1959. It was followed by Mr. Bridge in 1969. And a movie was made starring Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. This just sounds so intriguing to me. I think Mrs. Bridge is a housewife and mother in Kansas City, bringing up her 3 children and making a home for her husband, Walter. She shops, plays bridge, and goes to the country club, but as time passes, she finds that her life is unfulfilling, and she can't even ask herself the questions that trouble her. And while the children grow up and become strangers to her, Mrs. Bridge, kind yet bigoted, rich yet simple, is left uncertain of her place in the world. In a series of comical, subtle, and shattering vignettes, Evan Connell captures perfectly the contradictions, narrow margins, and fear that can shadow a life of comfort. Doesn't that sound good? Yeah. So I'll still have this when I get back. If I can keep it going and start it, I will. Then I was attracted to this NYRB that just came out this year. NYRB Books is republishing books. And this is by an Irish writer named John McGarren, The Pornographer. And this one says, when was this written, first of all? Let me find that out. John McGarren was born in 1934 and died in 2006. Yeah, 1979. Pornographer is a story of a writer down on his luck in Dublin, penning far from erotic tales to make ends meet. 30 years old, befogged by alcohol, sensitive yet indifferent to all emotional weather, the pornographer meets the slightly older Josephine. I guess he's called a pornographer because of the tales that he writes. A clever, cautiously optimistic magazine editor, that's Josephine, who soon confesses her love, and though the feeling isn't mutual, as he makes painfully clear, the affair goes on. Josephine becomes pregnant, and this being Ireland in the 70s, the piper must be paid. Meanwhile, the pornographer reels through the days, paying regular visits to an aunt. John McGarren's fourth novel is a character study of unsparing insight in rhythmic lyric prose. I did also try this a little bit, and it was really, um, I don't know, it was writing that grabbed me right away. I don't know if I'll get to this while I have it out when I get back. Between these two, I don't know, but I just wanted to share these with you. This one was published in this form in 2012. That's all I have for you. Thank you for joining me and putting up with my nasally voice. Be doing this and here with you before I leave on my trip. Let me know what you're looking forward to in the last, I mean, somebody said, is it 7 weeks until the end of the year? Yeah, let me know what you're getting into, what you're reading this time of the year. I'd love to know if you've read Rhine Journey by Anne Schlee. All these republished books I have in front of me. It's pretty cool. And then, of course, the brothers Karamazov. I know Paul and Trevor from Mookse and Gripes podcast have read this. One of them has read it, probably both, but one of them read it. I feel like one of them read it just this year. The Brothers K, as one of them refers to it. So, yeah, let me know. Thanks for joining me as always, and I'll see you in the next one.